still have two commissioners that have not come in to take their seats yet, but we're going to go ahead and get started on this work session. And the board members will have the opportunity to question the presenters. However, the public will not be able to speak at this particular time. We have a lot of material to cover, and I hope that we can move through it in an orderly fashion and get everything done that we have to have done. Let us bow for prayer, please. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the beautiful day that you've given us, for all of your manifold blessings that you give to us on a daily basis. Thank you, Father, for allowing us to represent the citizens of Lee County. And Father, as we come to this budget work session, I pray that you might open our minds and give us clear thought that the decisions that we make will be for the benefit of the citizens. We need your leadership. We recognize, Father, that you're the owner of all things, but you entrust to us the use of your creation. So I pray that we might preserve it and that we might handle the funds that we have expeditiously. For it's in Christ's name I pray. Amen. Amen. All right, I recognize Mr. Crumpton.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is a workshop, so we'll try to keep it as informal as possible. As we're going along, board members have any questions, please stop me. I'll be happy to answer them at that time. Also, my initial presentation here is pretty short, similar to the one I gave the Finance Committee, and some of these things you've seen before. So I did hand out the PowerPoint that I'm going over with you. It should be in front of you. Just to give the general fund summary, you have to bear with me here. I'm not as technically advanced as some of my folks, so going through this PowerPoint may take a while. Our tax base increased from $4.51 billion to $4.697 billion this year. The proposed tax rates remain the same at 75 cents. The tax revenue generated is $32.8 million last year and up to $34.2 million this year. Our 1 penny of the tax rate has increased from $436,000 to $455,000. You'll notice in the budget our sales tax revenue has gone down. That's due to the Medicaid swap. We also do not have as much growth in the sales tax next year as we have budgeted in the past. Typically in past years we'd use 4 to 5% growth. Based on Department of Revenue estimates, we only use 2%. And when we go through our financial statement in the regular board meeting, I go through sales tax revenues, you'll see why even 2% growth may be a little aggressive. And then the total budget is growing from $63.9 million to $64.5 million, a little over $500,000. This next sheet just summarizes the general fund revenues. Once again, shows the decrease in the local option sales tax, the other taxes and licenses, and then the real big drop that concerned us this year was sales and services, mainly in the health department, environmental services. Fees for our services that we charge are down considerably. And then the fund balance appropriated in this budget. Normally we start the year with a lower fund balance appropriated than what I have in there, but to make it balance this year and to give the schools what I felt was necessary, we had to appropriate a little bit more than normal, so almost $2.4 million in fund balance appropriated. Total recommended revenues a little over $64 million. General fund expenditures, the summary here, as you can see, the total general government is down, showing our decreases that we've done throughout the county. Public safety recommended budget is up $421,000. Economic development up $258,000. And then you can see in public health and welfare, we're down considerably. That's the Medicaid swap on the expense side. You can see that in social services. We also had a cut in public health to try to offset some of their revenue losses. So the health department did a good job in cutting their expenditure requests. In education, the school current expense recommended increase is $2.1 million. Community college current expense recommended increase is $184,000. Debt service increases by $180,000 this year, which is our largest debt service payment. And next year that starts to fall off. So total expenditure increase $492,000 or 0.77%. Not much growth there. Then we just gave you a little pie chart so you can see that we're pretty dependent on the sales tax revenues and the ad valorem property tax revenues as a chunk. You see our dependence, and it grows every year on those two. And then Lisa likes to give you the dollar bill and show you how we chop up that dollar bill. And the two big beneficiaries are human services and the education, Lee County Schools. Over half the budget goes to those two departments. That's the quick summary. I'll be happy to answer any questions off of just the summary.
Any commissioner have any question or comment for Mr. Crumpton before we move on to the next item?
In my office. Go check at the break. The rest of the agenda, Mr. Chairman, really off of questions that were raised by either commissioner directly to me or through the Finance Committee. There was a lot of discussion in the Finance Committee over the sheriff's request for personnel. There were a total of 9 new positions recommended in my budget, 5 of which went to the Sheriff's Department. So I was going to give Tracy and Randall the opportunity to speak to you today about their requests and what's going on in the sheriff and the jail.
Well, I want to clarify one point. There was not a lot of discussion from committee members. One committee member had some discussion, and we agreed to accept the sheriff's presence here today. There wasn't a lot of discussion.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Sheriff, you and Randall.
Thanks, sir.
Good afternoon. Hope y'all doing well. Mr. Reeves, how you doing? Able to speak to you?
All right.
Doing just fine.
Okay, Sheriff, are you just going to run through this handout, or do you have some additional comments to make?
Well, I would just, I think you know what I'm asking for. And I think one of the main issues today is talking about the uniformed patrol officers that we've requested. And I want to say this, that the 2 additional patrol officers that we received last year has helped tremendously at the sheriff's office in terms of deterring crime and just providing a better service. So, and I want to say I appreciate your support last year in giving us those 2 positions. We are asking for 2 more this year. And I want to say that last year's crime stats compared to 06, there was a reduction, and that's a good thing. Unfortunately, if the numbers hold in terms of our crime rate in the county to what we've had the past 3 months, they're going to spike back up. So, and we're looking at doing some things differently this summer to try and bring those numbers back down. But we believe that getting 2 more positions this year for our patrol division would help tremendously and would really complete our patrol division and get them where we believe they need to be. Our calls have increased this year since January, and our crime numbers have increased also compared to what they were last year. So we're just trying to do all we can to make sure that our crime stats stay down. You know, that's good for business and good for the community and everybody. So, but I'm just here today to answer whatever concerns that y'all may have for us.
In the packet, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
I was just gonna say, in the recommended budget, we do have 4 positions in that.
We have 5. He requested 10. In the packet I gave you for this weekend, I gave you the 5 summaries of his recommended position, or his requested positions. And you know, we met, Ms. Mentor and myself met with Sheriff Carter and Randall twice to go over their requests. And I think we, prior to the budget, had talked about trying to keep our head count as neutral as possible going from this year to next year. And we sat down with the sheriff and asked him, what the priorities were at that time. And we ended up coming up with an agreement on the 2 dispatchers and the jailer. So, I know there was some comments or whatever from some folks about why, doing that or recommending other positions when deputies are needed out in the county, but I don't think that was really discussed in our discussions that much. I told them we had limited funds and I would do the best to fund the positions and where their priorities lie, and that's where they were in those 3 positions. But the other 2 positions he had that are in the budget are grant positions. They're 2-year grants, gang task force and the drug task force. So after those 2 years, in all likelihood, we'll probably end up doing the funding in those positions. These are positions the governor's Crime Prevention Council tries to get you to fund because they're worthwhile and they're trying to address issues that are going on, not just in our community but across the state. So, the total number of positions increased as 9. To be neutral, we really should only be increasing 3 positions. But for various reasons, I'm getting into the next section, but a lot of these positions or several of these positions have revenue attached to them, have cost savings, but the only ones that don't are the 3 additional in the sheriff's department, the 2 dispatchers and the 1 jailer. Be 100% county funding, and then if you add the 2 deputies, once again, that's 100% county funding. There'll be no help on those positions from any sources of revenue.
Sheriff Carter, there are some who say that you have state drug interdiction money that could be used for head count. And will you respond to those people who think that, or tell us how you've used that money?
Well, we have used that money for buying equipment. There's been a lot of our narcotics unit have some of the best surveillance equipment available. We've also used it to purchase weapons and other equipment. We have a polygraph operator that we were able to send to school and purchase that equipment. There's numerous other, I could do a detailed report on that and need to do that for the commissioners for their information. But that money has tremendously helped us to buy equipment and things that we need that we don't have to come and ask the commission board to use tax money to do. Some of that money could be used for salaries, but what that would do is would deplete that money, and we would have to come to you for when we have equipment needs. So, but it has benefited us tremendously. There's some other things that we want to do. One is hopefully build an impound lot by using that money, and that's still being discussed and talked about, and we'll have to get your approval on that. But we are utilizing that money to help us move forward and buy equipment that we don't have to come and ask the commissioners for.
How much money do you have in your drug seizure?
Right now, there's a little over $60,000 I believe, in the account, and there are funds that we believe we're gonna get in the near future, so that will grow.
Well, my feeling is this, that one of the most important roles of government is public safety. And I think it's sometimes hard for those that maybe live in the city to understand what the safety needs are of those outside the city limits. But I can tell you, in my district, people are concerned. There have been a lot of break-ins. People have found people breaking into their neighbors' homes, and they're concerned about this. And I think when we take a look at, I found a few discretionary items I think we can cut out of the budget. I found a way to fund these too. And I think we have to consider, first of all, public safety, what's the role of government, and will it benefit all of the taxpayers, when we spend this money? And I think this is one area that we definitely need to do this.
And speaking about the asset forfeiture money, if these uniform positions are approved, we could use our money to purchase their equipment. They can drive used cars, and we're not going to be asking for you to equip those officers. We can do that with the funds that we have now.
Would you agree that we've not asked you to account for that money or bother you in any way with any of that money?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. And would you agree that if for some reason that money was no longer available at the amount or quantity that you currently have it, that whomever we bring on board would then become the responsibility of the county as an employee of yours?
Yes.
Okay. So there are some good reasons that we don't hire and you don't hire based on those figures. Some very good reasons, and I appreciate that. Would you also agree that, I think it was June 5th, you and I spoke about your budget. I know why you're here. You're not here because you came in to complain. You were requested to come here. Has your position changed from what you told me?
No, it has not. I mean,
And you know what you told
Yeah.
me, and I know what you
Right.
told me.
Mhm. I mean,
Well,
I'll just.
if you want to know, ask me. He told me that he was fine with the way we had arrived at honoring his request. That's what he said. This is the same thing I told Commissioner Shook that I'd just spoken with him 15 minutes before we started the finance meeting. That's what he said.
Well, I know last year, at this particular time, we were talking about personnel for your department, and the recommendation was to give you some, but you needed an additional one, and we did give you that additional person, which I think is a crime scenes investigator.
That's
And
correct.
how's that worked out?
It's worked out great, and I do accredit that for the positive results that we had last year in terms of our crime rate. And I'll just say this to what Commissioner Reeves referred to. We're going to work with the commissioners, and I mean.
And
I
we're
would-
working with you.
Right, and I
Okay.
agree with that. And do I need the 2 additional deputies? Yes. If you agree to just give me what the jail position and the 2 dispatchers, and we're going to work with that and move on.
Well, Tracy, the difference between the 2 patrol deputies and the 2 dispatchers is about $10,000. Would you rather have the deputies than the dispatchers?
Well, right now, if I had to choose between the 2, I'd rather have the dispatchers, because we do need to beef up our communications. But that's not me saying that, that I don't want the deputies. But if I have to pick and choose, then yes.
But you
I
take
would
the
choose.
10 and we gave them.
Sir?
You take the 10 and we gave them one.
Well, yeah, I
Okay.
probably would, but
I understand all that.
right.
I understand
But
that.
I think
And I appreciate it.
it's my job as sheriff to request what I feel like I need.
And I support that. And it's our job to try and use the public's money in the best,
And I
most efficient way
understand
we
that.
can.
And I understand
Okay,
that.
so So it's not us that's having a difference of opinion. It may be one other person who happens to think that no other part of the county is concerned about crime. The entire county suffers with the same problem. The city suffers with the same problem. So we're all in this together, and we're going to do our best to work it out together. But I'm not very fond of having to be in a situation where it looks like we're not supporting
Right.
law enforcement.
Right,
When in
and
fact
I
we
have,
are.
and you have never heard me say that.
And not
Ever.
accusing you of it.
Right.
Not accusing you of it. Just simply saying that sometimes the picture's distorted when we sit here and go through these dialogues, when in fact we know that we've already talked about these things. We've already agreed that there are some things that we can and cannot do at this time. And we're willing to work with you and continue to work with you.
Sheriff Carter, since your conversation on June 5th, would you say you'd had any calls from people in the southern part of the county? I can only judge on the number of calls I've had and the conversations I've had with people.
There is concerns about protection in the county and visibility. I mean, you know, I hear those concerns not just in the southern part, but in other areas too. You know, we want to move things forward, and I want to work with the commissioners. So, you know, and I'm not trying to get in the middle of anything, but you know, it is what it is.
You might be running late there.
But I do. And I've got enough to deal with at the sheriff's office. But
Now, these two grant positions, we have recommended $51,511 for each one of these. In talking with Ms. Mentor, the actual grant funding we get reimbursed for is only $83,896. I mean, and that's
The difference is the benefits. The county is responsible for the fringes and benefits.
and the cars.
So we are putting
They pay the
money into those
100%
two
of the
positions.
salary. We pay all taxes, fringes, benefits, and then we have
some
to
of the
equip the
equipment is
officers.
included in on those grants too.
Like the weapons and stuff like that, we will incur those type of costs in the grant. But you do have 25% funding that we had to match in order to make the grant work. So we are absorbing 25%.
Well, not counting that 25%, I believe the sheriff's department is getting 14% of the proposed budget. Is that correct?
I'll tell you in a second.
Well, just to give an idea how much we're putting into the sheriff's department.
Yes, sir. The recommended budget for the sheriff is, not including the jail, is 3.9 million. That's roughly 6% of the budget. Of course,
What's the increase?
no, that's total. That's total. That department, just the sheriff's department, represents 6%. Law enforcement and emergency services, you have to add in the fire marshal,
And that
emergency
brings
management,
it up.
and the jail.
Public safety to about 14%.
That's right. That's all the departments, not just sheriff, that we fund through public safety.
Tracy, let's say that you get a call from the northern part of the county, up in the Deep River area somewhere, and another one down on County Line Road. You know, how long would it take you to get deputies dispatched to each of those if they came in simultaneously?
Well, our response time varies because it depends on what time of the day it is. It depends on how many officers we have working and where they are. That's correct. So it really depends. I mean, I
Could it take as long as 30 minutes?
could.
Because that's the complaint I'm hearing from some of the taxpayers in my district.
What we run into with our patrol division is we have officers that get sick, we have officers that take vacations, we have officers that build compensatory time and they have to take that off. So sometimes we may only have 3 officers working at 3 o'clock in the morning, for example. So if we get 2 emergency calls, then that could stretch our resources.
Could you rotate a gang officer and narcotics officer into that mix?
Well,
Like on call?
They would be out patrolling at times and would be able to answer calls. And our detective division, civil division, narcotics division, they pitch in too at times. But so yeah, that does come into play.
If they're available, they respond.
Yes, yeah. If it's an emergency call, and there's need for backup, and sometimes when it's not an emergency call, if the other officers are tied up.
And if we could get you one deputy on July 1st, another one on January 1st, would that work also? Because I found $169,000 here that I think, is debatable among this board. And your cost for these two, if we would add them both on July 1st, is $91,427. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
This figure on the crime rate, how do you arrive at that figure?
The state does that, and it's incidents per 100,000 people. Now, our crime rate is just a total of the index offenses that we have in the within the year, but then the state has their formula that they compute. So,
Sheriff, how much, as far as the patrol vehicles, of using the mobile data terminals, how much burden does that take off the dispatcher if a deputy is doing a, check on somebody? How much does that take away from the work that the dispatcher would do?
it helps because that's less that they have to ask the dispatcher to do.
But yet they can sit there and find out other information of what somebody's been charged with, whether it be a felony or something like this, outstanding warrants. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, the problem we run into with our dispatchers is we have one dispatcher per shift.
Right.
And when they're out for whatever reason, we have to rely on part-time help. If it's during the day, we have to pull our secretaries, which pulls them away from their duties. So it really, running a skeleton crew like that really causes a lot of problems. And our dispatchers also greet the public whenever they come into the sheriff's office. So that's another duty that they have. So it would really help tremendously to have an additional 2 dispatchers that we could run during high traffic times to help.
Right.
Yeah, the sheriff is, they have scheduling issues with the dispatchers. When we were going through the Kronos application, it really came to light the problems they have with their scheduling. They have a quirky system where almost all their dispatchers work on one day, pull a 4-hour shift, and it makes it very cumbersome for them to schedule. So this, is one of the reasons that I recommended at least one dispatcher be funded this year, was because of the problems they were having there. And then they rely quite a bit on part-time dispatchers, and keeping those folks trained and up to date is difficult in this day and time. So,
And it'll save a lot in terms of part-time money.
and those savings are in the budget, So there is some offset with the dispatchers there.
Well, we've heard from the sheriff, and the final decision will be made by the finance committee when they recommend the final budget to us.
Final decision be made on a vote of the whole board, right?
Yeah, but on the recommendation from the finance committee, we will put any changes together for the final budget, which we will vote on the 30th of this month.
Just for comparison's sake, I pulled down some information from North Carolina, the UNC government school. Chatham County, 30 deputies. Columbus County, which I found to be somewhat similar to ours, 27. Edgecombe County, 22. The Franklin County, 29. You look at Chatham and Harnett has 64. Of course, they're a little bit larger than us. But when you take a look at the deputies and the staff that other county law enforcement has, we really are trying to catch up for a couple of years, I think, of being really behind.
And I think we're catching up. I mean, we're showing progress. It's just biting off more than you can chew at one time. I think that's,
Well, I think
You
some of these
get-
other positions that certain people are advocating for maybe aren't as high a priority as public safety, so I'll fight for that when the time comes.
Well, I don't know if there's gonna be a fight, but the point that I like, a question I'd like to raise to you, you call out the number of personnel. Did you compare the square mileage for coverage in each one of those counties?
Pretty much I looked for population, and I looked for a city that was about the size of Sanford, tried to do a competitive analysis that way.
No, we're talking county right now. He controls the city, and I'm glad that he does, but we're talking county, and you're trying to compare deputies and not police officers. So when you start looking at the numbers and the square footage, you would, I mean, the yardage or mileage, you'd actually look at those counties and find that they're undermanned for their size.
Yeah,
If you
there
look
were a
at-
couple of counties that were similar to
You
us.
told me Edgecombe
You know,
and
the
Columbus could use 100 deputies.
Lenore County, very, very similar to ours, I think. As far as total population, you had Kinston, which had 23,000. They've got 25 deputies, 45 total in their department.
How many do you have, Sheriff?
Square miles.
We have 18 uniformed deputies. We have a total of 42 sworn personnel. And that's detectives and narcotics officers and civil officers and court bailiffs. So. And I understand what Ms. Shook's trying to do, but you do have to be careful comparing counties because there's a lot of things that come into play on that. But I understand what you're doing. But
And
just
so
be
do
careful
I,
of that.
and that's the only reason I bring it
Right,
out.
I agree.
mean, there's a lot of difference.
Mhm.
It's just not the numbers. There's more to it than just the numbers. And I like to say to you that it's, when you got word from the county manager of what the fallout would be and the timing and all, that initially came from the committee itself. It comes back to the committee once we heard your side.
I understand.
Doesn't mean that it's final, it just means that
Right.
that's what our position is based on the money we have right now.
Right.
So obviously, we hear your plea and we'll certainly give it more consideration, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna change.
Right.
It just means that we understand and we hear you.
Well, and that's the purpose for this work session today, to hear requests and then to consider them. And as I said before, the final recommended budget will come at the recommendation of the Finance Committee and the county manager. And it'll be up to the whole board to approve or disapprove their recommendation. So we appreciate you coming, Sheriff, and
Good to be here.
I'm glad, and you are doing a good job. And I know as I travel around the county, I see deputies out there about every area.
Have we heard the decision today on that fiasco on White
Don't give them a
Hill,
campaign speech.
White Hill
Yeah.
Road? Wasn't the judge gonna decide on that one today?
I'm not sure if it's happening today or not, Ms. Shook. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for listening to us, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
thank you for what you do.
The reason I asked is I flipped on the TV, I missed the first part of it, it said there's gonna be a big decision made in Lee, this was Raleigh TV, big decision made in Lee County today, and I thought, how'd they know we were having a budget work session? And then it dawned on me that they were talking about
It's next Monday.
drug, oh,
Monday
it's next
week.
Monday.
Monday
Okay.
week.
Mr. Chairman,
Crumpet.
the other four personnel that I recommended, number one was the deputy county attorney under administration. The second employee was administrative support assistant one in elections. The third was the computer support technician 2 in information technology IT. And then the fourth was one income maintenance caseworker 2 for social services. And most of these positions either have significant cost savings associated with the position or some type of state shared revenue. So I felt pretty good recommending those positions since they would have minimal cost to the county or some type of savings.
All right, any comments or questions?
The only one I question is the deputy county attorney. And I'll pass out some information, again, that I pulled down from the UNC School of Government.
All right.
What this is a listing of competitive salaries or salaries for county attorneys. But what I found interesting from this, that of the 100 counties, there's 53 counties that don't have a full-time, don't have a county attorney. And there's only 25 other counties besides us that do have a full-time county attorney on staff. And so I'm very hesitant to approve this position for several reasons. First of all, I think that when you take a look at what we're wanting to do, shift that person from social services, legal work, to the administrative stuff for the staff, they're really two different disciplines in law. And so I'm not sure the transition would be that easy. Secondly is, we'll have a whole new board up here come November, possibly 4 new board members. And since the county attorney does report to the board, I think it probably is best to wait on this until after the board is seated, after November elections. Third, I just think, this is kind of an important decision. I think we need to look at all of our options. It may be that this ends up being one of them, but I'm recommending that it be pulled from the proposed budget at this time and be taken up later. But I think we need to look at all of our options here. Those are my thoughts on that. And right now, it's not costing us anything, for the contracted legal services we have for social services. We bill that back to the state. And so I understand, that you'd be able to recover some of that billing, but realistically, I don't know that that's going to be a good way to transition somebody from that area of the law to what Mr. Hoyle does.
Mr. Hull, how many years you been with Lee County?
You were hired full-time as an employee of the county in 1990 or 1991. About the same time I was hired as a finance officer. And prior to that, he served as outside. He had his own, he was a retainer.
Do you use a computer? You do not use a computer. So safe to say that everything that you've garnered in the last 20 years is in your head. I mean, it's written down or it's in your head one way or another. It's not on a floppy drive or a hard drive somewhere where it can be easily accessed, right?
They are or not on computer?
Or not?
Or not.
Who does the
Well-
drawing up the contracts? Who types them up?
They don't prepare them. They just.
Mr.
They
Hull
know where
handwrites
all the
them.
copies are
Right.
filed and, okay.
Well, I think that all the general statutes, we do have that on computer. Correct? So can't you access it without any problem?
I'm more referring.
That can't do the work.
I'm more referring to the nuances of the county, so far as, not the written contracts. I'm talking about all the little things that you need to know as a county attorney to make everything work.
The law is the law. You have to abide by the statutes, and, we've got all the previous contracts there, all the bonds and whatever, so,
I think you're preparing someone to take the helm, after Mr. Hull retires. I think it's just smart business. It's planning a succession.
I think that's prudent that we do that, Jamie, and I think I'm asking that we look at other options and then decide what's
Well,
best.
if you're gonna cut something, I think you can find something else to cut, because I think this is one of those positions that's really needs to be in there. I mean, you know,
Would you agree with me that it might be best to wait until the full board gets on in November?
Well, we're gonna approve the budget June the 30th. And what's in that budget is going to govern what we have for the coming fiscal year.
John, I noticed in Scotland County,
No comparison, Scott.
There's no comparison.
I'm telling you.
I know, but how did that work out? You had a council on a retainer and then fees, total about $44,000.
Well, you compete, the number one thing is you compete with his private practice. So you're not always number one. When I go into Mr. Hull's office and I need some advice or I need some work on something, you know, I get it. And the same thing with you all. You know, that's, you know, you're the number one priority for Mr. Hull.
And
So
I
I
guess
think
that would
that's
depend on the amount of the
big difference.
retainer, because I'm looking here, and Scotland County had $31.25, but some of these firms, $18,000, $17,500, so I guess that's part of the,
The retainer covers him coming to the meetings. And whenever I would call him, I knew I was on the clock, so I made it fast. And if he wanted to keep talking, I'd say goodbye and hang up. Because I knew I was on the clock.
And you forgot something, you called back and the clock started.
That's exactly right.
believe me, I've been a paralegal for years, I know how those clocks work. But
Hey, Lynn.
I think that we need to, you know, check with some of these other counties that are doing it on a retainer basis. Some of them have paralegals,
I mean,
and
there's situations on our situations. I mean, you can, I mean, I look at, you know, what we're gonna be able to bill back the state, and then what we're losing in billings now, so far as, you know, all the things that, you know, you and I both want done out in the county, the trash, you know, cleanup. Somebody's gotta be able to do that. And until we have the bandwidth to do it, it's not gonna get done. The dog catcher, I mean, you might as well, I mean, we're not going after these people who have all these problems out in the county because we don't have the bandwidth. I mean, you know, you can consult with somebody, you can go hire somebody else on retainer, and, you know, but it just doesn't, it's not efficient.
Well, we can look at every county in the state of North Carolina, but the bottom line is, I think we need to make up our mind what's best for Lee County.
That's right.
We have made some good decisions in the past, and believe me, in going around to the conferences and so forth, there are a lot of folks who would like to operate their county as well as we operate Lee County. And I think there are one or two board members who would back me up on that. We have a very high standing in the state of North Carolina. These comparisons, they're good and gives us a guideline, but at the end of the day, we're going to do what's best for the citizens of Lee County. That's
all I'm asking for is that we look at all of our options.
Well-
This may be the best one, the one that's
we're
been
doing it.
proposed, but I think we need to look at all options.
Well, are you gonna present the other options, or what do you propose?
I think the options are, you know, talk with some of these counties that don't have full-time staff, you know. We kind of know what type of transactions and questions come up here pretty much on a regular basis, and just, you know, see if there's other counties that have those same type of things and issues that come up, and, you know, compare rates. And are you talking about eventually having 2 full-time attorneys on staff?
No, one.
See, and there's my main concern again, is I think
I'm
when you go
concerned
from...
of overlap.
Hmm?
I just want enough overlap so that this person is trained under him and can get the training that, you know, whatever he can get out of his head, you know, to them, and so that, you know, I think it's just smart business.
And I think it's prudent, we need to have a backup, and we need to make sure we know where all his files are. But as I looked at the hours that currently are billed out, it was kind of erratic. And so, you know, what happens when the situation gets where they're spending all their time in social services, not enough time to transition into his job? we're really in no better position, because then we'd have to hire somebody there, and we're back to finding somebody to contract out social services with again.
That's a good thing about contracts and how you write them up. If you start spending too much time down at that courthouse, then maybe that's where they need to be all on their own. We just get another contract with another person. And in other words, it's pretty simple. We're going to be able to get the best and most beneficial use from the individual based on their experience level and the kind of work that you're talking about with social services. And the other times, we're expecting them to work with our county attorney to learn the operations of county government. You speak as if we can just walk out and pull somebody off the street who just got out of law school or who's looking for work and come in and do this work. And I don't think it's that simple.
I'm not saying it's going to be simple, but I'm saying I think it's going to be a larger challenge finding somebody who will transition from the social services side of the law to the general administration side of government.
I've been here, I've already seen it done. It's not that impossible.
I'm not saying it's impossible.
Well, we've done it here in Lee County. We had
Yeah.
an additional attorney a few years ago.
And I've heard that that wasn't such a good experience. That's why we end up contracting stuff out, because she left.
Well, she left, and then
You
we
can't
had to do
things.
something else.
We didn't give her a life sentence. I mean, you just hire the people, and when they get tired, it's just like companies and business. When people are ready to make their transition, they do that. What happens here to the rest of us is on us. But you can't expect them to come and stay forever, because Mr. Hall's been here longer than some of the policies we have, many of the policies we have.
I'm not saying I expect somebody to be here forever. I just think this was really a surprise to see this in this proposed budget, because we've not had any kind of general or formal or informal discussions on it. And I just think we need to look at all of our options and then do what's best for the taxpayers and the county.
Hey, if we were funding the 2 deputies for the sheriff, would you be having this conversation?
Well, that's part of the $169,000 I found here.
We can do that. We brought it up.
And I tell you, living in my part of the county, I get calls from people, and I go out to the coffee shop, and they're telling me about, all the break-ins and whatever.
Commissioner Shook, this entire county is a part of your responsibility. The entire county. All parts of this county have similar, if not the same, problems. We all have them.
Would you agree that public safety has got to be a top priority of the county?
Yes, and I'll also agree that you can't provide enough money for law enforcement to take care of all the crime. You just can't do it. Matter of fact, go down here to Robertson County and find out part of the crime was the law enforcement. So don't keep suggesting that all you got to do is throw money at it, because that's not what it is.
I'm not saying throwing money,
Well,
just
we're
throwing money at it,
providing-
but I'm saying getting enough deputies on the road to have enough of a presence to make a difference. And I'll tell you, that's what I'm hearing from people in my district. I've heard it from
You
people
need to come out of your district.
in the
sometime.
Deep River area also.
Yeah.
Well, I
You need
appreciate,
to come out sometime.
I appreciate the comments, but we've left the sheriff department. We're now dealing with these additional positions.
The one comment I'll make about the additional position, as I will with Mr. Hall's position, those 2 positions ought to be reporting to the board, and that will be at least one commissioner's recommendation that they become directive of the Board of Commissioners and not the manager. He has access to them at all times, and so will DSS. But their direct report will be to the Board of Commissioners.
Isn't that the way it is now?
Well,
All right, well,
For him, it
the
is.
Finance Committee can
Right.
consider all the comments that have been made concerning these positions, and especially the Deputy County Attorney. And we'll look forward to a recommendation from that board, and then we'll act accordingly. All right, moving on to the Board of Education, Compton.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, we had a lot of discussion about the schools and the schools' request for the upcoming fiscal year. It was, the increase was quite staggering, to tell you the truth. But it's here in the package. We furnished all the additional information that we requested to the board members. I could talk about their budget, but, forever. But I'll be happy, I promise, just be quiet and just answer any questions
But
that y'all might have about their budget.
do we have anyone from the Board of Education here to appeal to us?
I did not, I didn't extend an invitation to them.
Most public meetings, they have invitations.
What about the questions that were brought up at Finance Committee? Do you have answers to that?
Do not have, the main question was the 8 items, I forgot my list of 8 items, but, and how much of that, their 16+ million went towards those 8 items. We're still trying to reconcile that and work that out, but just in a general view, I would say it's about 1/3 goes towards our 8 items, and the rest goes towards, their programs or other areas outside those 8 items.
So we have a former school board member here. Can I ask you a few questions? What is, I'm looking, have you guys, anybody pulled down the Lee County Schools org chart? No teachers or principals on this one. You're seeing all the boxes. But I have a question. What's a migrant recruiter? They go out and recruit migrants?
Y'all having a private discussion?
I'm just-
What was his answer? I want to hear what his answer was. That's what I want to hear. No, he works with migrant farm workers who come in and out of the state of North Carolina. Yeah, I know, bro. I know.
The reason I asked this is this was very troubling to me. Somebody in my district who was trying to get their child into Greenwood had all these forms to fill out, and it's obvious they were looking for more Hispanic population. And she said, I think what I figured out is they were trying to get me a job. Do we have people in the school system who are trying to find jobs for some of these parents? And there's a director of career and technical education. And when I look at their huge budget, all I see is $66,000 for vocational education. Is that right?
Ms. Shook, you're our representative to the school board.
I know that.
You need to ask the school board
Well, I just
some of
did
those
I
questions.
spent all day yesterday
Somebody.
preparing for this meeting, so,
She has to ask those questions through this board based on the letter.
oh yeah, I can't do that anymore, can I? I have to go through this board,
Not without
go through you.
not without a vote from the board.
That's right.
Well,
Well, you can practice on
if she's
Commissioner
recognized by the chairman of the Board of Education, she could be.
But the DPI has lots of interesting information on it, and I just found this interesting because I like to compare, the number of local positions that we have. And again, this really isn't apples to apples because Harnett County has twice the number of students we have. Chatham County has less than we have, and Moore County has a little bit more. But what really grabbed my attention were the service workers. Chatham County has 83 service workers they pay for locally. Lee County has 125. Harnett County had 26. And when you look at the other different classifications of positions that are paid for locally, that was kind of an eye-opener for me.
I mean,
Well,
schools
we,
does Chatham have, you know?
Chatham has 11 elementaries and 5 secondaries.
So we've got almost the same number of schools and.
Chatham's got more square miles than we have.
And this was for the, they're always a year behind at DPI with data, but their local contribution, 17.8 million, and they're twice the number of students that we are. Their ADM for first month of 06-07, that's how far behind this data is, was 7,619, as opposed to us was 9,330.
How many new schools have they built and they're paying for?
I don't have access to that. I think some of their schools are gonna get funded by the federal government because of BRAC.
The association, I don't have that spreadsheet with me, but it does have the total expenditures of current expense, current capital, and debt for every county in the state, all 112 school districts broken out. If you go to page 69, I've got the spreadsheet that shows our increases to the school board over the last 7 budgets. I'm in the I'm in section 4, page 69 of the workshop.
What is the CE and CO?
CE is current expense and CO is capital. Capital outlay.
Outlay, okay.
So you add, those 3 together. With the QSAP, this number has been updated to QSAP. It's $23.4 million going to the Board of Education. Although we don't pay all that directly to them, we're paying it on their behalf. 36% of the total budget goes to the Board of Education. We're now have a very big number, and the growth rate of their local funding, we cannot continue at this rate without tax rate increases in the future. And that's why I bring it to your attention, because it's you see these increases. We started back at 13 million in fiscal year 2003, and we're up to 23.4 million now, $10 million over 7 budgets. Our tax base doesn't even grow at that rate. So I don't know how you continue to fund the Board of Education at this rate without future tax rate increases.
Charter schools, charter
I
schools.
guess that's a warning.
Yes, sir. I'm issuing
The spreadsheet you put together for us at the Finance Committee, you put that in here for everybody, right?
it's in your...
One that shows per pupil for the various line items?
Yeah, that's in your back.
And Commissioner Kelly pointed this out in the Finance Committee meeting, I thought was eye-opening. It was for the Board and Central Office Administration. From 2003-4 went from 15,716 to $1,001,000 for Board and Central Office Administration.
Pretty much, as we're going through this, the top 3 line items there are some statutorily required expenses in the administration and the auxiliary support personnel and services. But you can see this is where the majority of their expenditures are of the current expense money, and a majority of those expenditures are not statutorily required. But over time, that's what current expense has grown into, not just in this county, but across the state. As Board of Education develop programs to basically try to meet the No Child Left Behind requirements and the EOG testing. And if you talk to the Board of Education and they talk about their new programs and they want to get beyond brick and mortar and talk programs, it really comes back to the testing and how they're graded and how they're seen as showing continual improvement is the pressure they're receiving. Not saying that we can afford all this that they're requesting, but I understand. At least I understand what they're trying to do. But I think our ability to pay is the problem.
It seems to me, and I look at budgets every day, but when the biggest thing is you always look at what's going to reoccur every year, and the reoccurring aspect of their budget to me looks like programs, and I'd like to know if they've ever cut a program. Has there ever?
Well, they were asked this year by the Board of Education to look at all existing programs and to identify those programs that were not working. The staff was, and they tried to develop plans to be able to fund on page 70 you can see these programs that are called additional supplemental budget requests. The idea was if they could cut money in their existing programs, that they wanted to be able to fund that. I don't know where they stood in those cuts, but obviously, their budget is an ongoing process, just like ours. So
I mean,
it's hard to stay up to date.
These last three things down here, the ninth grade academy, STEM program, additional personnel, and the international baccalaureate program, total $915,000. That's 2 cents on our tax increase.
Yes.
That's the kind of what I'm saying. And it might be very well justified, but it's a program and it will continue from here on out. And it's not like a building where you can retire the debt.
Roughly how many programs comes into the school year, or the beginning of the school year each year, that has any funding, or is there funding tied to it?
They have a bunch of programs. I mean, I don't exactly know how many, but they're getting program money from the state and federal level. Most of it comes from the state level. Most of that money is restricted. That's why the local money is so important to the Board of Education, is where their flexibility. The money we give them gives them flexibility to do things outside of the mandates at the federal and state level. And that's why their sheriff's left. I shouldn't say this, but they're kind of like the sheriff. They're going to ask for the moon and hope they get halfway there, and things will be good. But I'm saying that these shoot for the moon type requests in the future, they're going to have to tell us what they're taking a look at what we can afford and listing their priorities. It's difficult, but we're not going to be able to fund the shoot for the moon kind of programs.
Well, another thing too that I think commissioners need to think about, and the future boards are going to have to deal with it, is the early college program. After next year, you're going to have to make a decision, I believe, on how you're going to fund that. Is that correct, Mr. Reed?
I'm not certain about that.
Funded by the Gates, isn't it? For 5 years.
In the 30 years.
Yeah.
It's not 100% funded there. We're paying for teachers. Some other things.
Administration.
Everybody's having to buckle their belts, on their home budgets and whatever. And I just would encourage, I look at all these positions that are funded locally that the state says really aren't needed, or they would fund them, and very, very heavy at the top. And I'm speaking now as a taxpayer, not a commissioner. I want my taxes to get into the classroom, where the teachers are, and there. And I see almost every employee at the school gets a supplement. And that's one of the other things I learned from the research I did, is not all LEAs give supplements to all employees. So I don't know when that started. I don't think that's always been the case. And so I think we need to encourage them to maybe look for some head count that's not really necessary, that's not instructional, and because you add up the benefits and the insurance and the FICA and all that stuff on top level administrators, that adds up. That's just my thoughts. That's a taxpayer speaking, not Commissioner Shook.
No, that makes good common sense, but part of the problem, at least as I have heard as a result of this past primary, that the focus is on electing folks who will continue to give the money and not hold people accountable. And that's the unfortunate part of this whole operation. Until this board and the legislature starts to try and educate the public on who's responsible for how this money is being distributed, then boards of commissioners keep getting targeted as being the problem. I wanted to ask the manager to explain page 73, these 11 counties here. what that means.
I was asked by Commissioner Kelly, who, this question stemmed from what was going on in Wake County with the Wake County Board of Commissioners talking to the Board of Education about allocating their budget by purpose and function. How many counties allocate money to the Board of Education by purpose and function? And contacted the Association of County Commissioners, and they gave me this 11. These are the 11 that currently do it. They do it for various reasons.
And explain what they actually do with it.
All right. You take that spreadsheet that I gave you. Those are the classifications of purpose and function. And you can allocate the money to them by those line items. Well, they're not really line items, they're purpose and function items. Can't call them line items. You cannot line item the school board's budget, but you can allocate it based on those programs and functions right there. And that restricts, the Board of Education and their ability to move money within their budget or to fund new programs. Statute allows them to move up to 25% of any one line or any one purpose and function into another function. But you can restrict that further in your budget ordinance by allocating it as far down as 10%. So that was just a question that was asked. But I think you need to, if you were to allocate it by purpose and function, what would be the purpose behind that, and what would you be wanting to do with the Board of Education at that point?
I like this concept. I think people sometimes don't understand our role as commissioners. And that's a fiduciary role to make sure that the money that we are giving them is spent on what they say they're going to spend it on. And that's why I like that, maybe this type of a system a little bit. It's not like we're trying to tell them how to spend it, that's what they're elected to do, but when we're looking at the rise in what we've given them each year for the last 4 years, at some point we need to start asking some tough questions.
I also think the general public needs to know that Lee County's been, by these numbers, you can tell Lee County's been playing catch-up. They've been playing catch-up over the past 10, 12 years. The numbers in 2003, current expense are $8.7 million. This year is $15.6. Capital outlay is 1.6 to 2.2. And debt service 2.6 to 5.5. Lee County's been playing catch-up, and we need to take a breath, because if you don't, we're going to tax our citizenry to death.
Well, your breathtaking is already here. The only way you can continue at this pace is
That's
to
right.
increase taxes.
That's right.
Which is not something I'm willing to do.
Well, and that's what the county manager has warned us about today for future years. I think we can hold the line this year, but what's gonna happen next year and the year after that? And with additional requests from them for facilities.
The capital budget for the schools, or the capital request, their long-range capital plan is very concerning. That's our primary responsibility, is to provide facilities, for the schools, and probably gets us into the next conversation. But it's hard for us right now to continue to build new schools and to repair the existing ones and hold the tax rate the way it is. I just don't see how we can do it. We did everything we could do this year to give them the money to open up the middle school without a tax rate increase. That should have been a 3-cent tax increase, and the county staff, department heads, most of them are who are here today, were the ones that sucked it up. I didn't really cut their budgets. I asked them to cut their own budgets, and they did. And that was how we gave the schools the money to open up the middle school.
So with the middle school, are they just taking the same student population that was at 2 and taking it there? So my hope, my wish was that they could have done some creative scheduling and shared teacher resources. I was surprised to see all the new head count they want for Sandley Middle School. I was hoping they could do some, because they really don't have a lot more students, but they're just breaking them up. And so I was hoping that some creative scheduling would have taken place and allowed them to share some resources among schools without having to add more head count. Is that wishful thinking?
Well,
Pipe dream?
yeah, probably so, because with that age group, you have to consider the age of the students that are there.
You have to take a look at the teachers that they can share. You know, art teachers, band teachers, that kind of stuff. You know, there was discussion about, you know, moving them around the middle schools, but you're talking about increased travel, you know, and the teachers having to be in different spots, and they probably believe there would be some logistical problems, and whether they'd be able to provide the quality education without having them there full time.
Well, getting back to the purpose and function thing, I'm not sure that we're ready to do that. There'll be additional work involved in keeping up with the disbursement of the funds. Is that correct?
Actually, no, you just do it by your budget ordinance, and then you allocate it to them by that, and their auditor is the one that has to certify back to you that the funds were spent as allocated in our budget ordinance. Well, like I said, there's a lot of flexibility, and if they have to, depending upon how restrictive you want to be, if you went down to 10% between funds, if they wanted to move more than 10%, they'd have to come back here and ask you for a budget amendment to move that money.
Did you?
I think, we'll come back, what is the purpose of doing it? What are you trying to tell the Board of Education if you were to allocate it by purpose and function? And, should there be some communication before you do that?
Well, I agree with accountability, but at the same time, the Board of Education is an elected board, just like we are.
Well, this is not something you can arbitrarily do. This is by statute that allows us to do this. The difference is, and I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree totally, but I think for the most part, it's a matter of both boards are elected boards, and it's a matter of coming to a meeting of the minds and understanding that no one's trying to control, one is not trying to control the other. We're simply trying to have more accountability when people are asking us, what are you doing with the money they're already getting? Well, I can't answer what they're doing until I see it in this format. Then I have a better way of answering. But if it's going to be helter-skelter and just any way they want to throw it at you, then no, I can't tell them. The Board of Education don't want you to tell them.
Okay, any further comments on the schools? If
John.
not, we need to move on.
I need to ask you if we ever got permission to go on those premises.
Yes, sir, we
Yes,
have.
you have the letters. Yeah, they should be part of your additional supplement.
All right.
Both the community college and also from the school board.
I want to ask that we discuss why we have the full board here. Moving on with the health and
And I
safety.
think Mr. Crompton's going to do that in our regular meeting, aren't you?
Actually, I have it down here in item number 5.
All right.
To review the letters.
All right.
Frank, I wasn't quite sure that we'd get approval after the first response. It came back from the Board of Education, so.
Well, I think they understood more
No
after
fireworks.
that first letter and the second letter that I submitted. And I think they understood what we really were after. We're not trying to do their business, but we need to know what the safety concerns are and the health concerns and take care of those ASAP.
Well, I think I had some time to think about it, and as you saw in the package, I gave you some background on those that have contacted us. I did not get any information from Mr. Mullins, our local architect, who expressed interest in the high school project, but I would say that Mr. Mullins and the construction control folks have a bigger interest in the height plan and being involved as reviewing the construction plans and trying to cut costs in the plan or do anything like that. I have met with Mr. Martin several times and discussed items with him, and I think if we want to just do initial health and safety inspection, I think he'd probably be the best one qualified for that. I also think that we could probably put a team together with our staff. I contacted the city manager, asked him if we could use the chief building inspector and his fire marshal, in addition to our fire marshal. Asked Mr. Haynes if we could use the environmental health director to assist Mr. Martin with the initial assessment of the schools, and understanding that we didn't want to spend, an arm and a leg to do the initial inspection. I felt that would be the most economical way to do that. Mr. Martin would prefer to be hired as a temporary employee with the board, and that way, at any point where we don't need his services anymore or we want more services, we can meet with him and determine what his scope will be. But I think we need just to make sure that this is an assessment of the facility. We're not assessing the Jimmy Height plan or any other plan the school board might have for construction, because
We're looking for problems.
if we go, and once we have the assessment documented, at that point, we'll have to meet with the Board of Education, because they're the ones that'll have to determine, along, hopefully with us, how we're going to address those issues, if there are any found, which, based on the comments, I'm sure we're going to find something, but you don't know if that makes it a risk to the students to go back in the fall. So,
Well, and you mentioned that team, perhaps we could have a representative from the maintenance department, Mr. Pittman, or someone from the school to be a part of that team as they go around and do the work.
Yeah, I
I
made
think
that.
that'd be good.
And that,
And I did talk to Dr. Garrett about
then
that before.
nobody would be in the dark. Everybody would be on the same page.
We did the same thing for community college.
Dr. Garrett did say that, they wanted to make sure that while the tours are being done and the actual inspection of the building, they'd like to have a representative from the community college there. And I'm sure the Board of Education would like to have a representative as we're going through the school. I feel better if they were with us, or with that group.
I was impressed with both Mr. Martin and this Construction Control Corporation. As I read through all the comments in the Construction Control Corporation and his latest response back to you, I was thinking to myself, I wish we had had this 2 schools ago.
Well, we
I think
didn't
Mr.
know
Quigley-
about him till last
The Board of
year.
Education has reviewed information from Construction Control Corporation. And I don't know if the whole board did, but the chairman of their board told me that they didn't see any value in using a firm like this. They felt they had the right man in Mr. Height and that he could take care of it. But I don't believe that any of these folks, is their intention to impede what's trying to be done. It's actually try to bring it in a lower cost. But once again, that's a different deal. And yes, Mr. Martin's credentials are pretty impressive, especially on page 76 with what he did with the Board of Education in the Chicago School District.
But even
So it's impressive.
before you get to how impressive his credentials are, look at page 74, some of the comments made, and then look at the position that some of the members are taking. They're the very ones that cry for health and safety conditions. And when you offer it, there's opposition.
Well, I believe the general statute was referred to at our last meeting, that we, along with the school board and the Board of Commissioners, we equally are responsible for the safety and well-being of those students.
There's no question. But my concern is that it bothers me that we can't seem to separate the two issues. We're talking about health and safety as it stands today and not one plan or another. We're not commenting.
We're not talking about the
Not
renovation
at all.
project.
Correct. And that doesn't make any sense to me.
And I read the Construction Control Corporation comments about the mold problems. Now, that's something that should have been corrected years ago. It just didn't crop up overnight. And when you read his, description there, I think that's something that maybe could have been handled. So the buildings they're demolishing this summer, are they any with some of the health concerns that they're doing the science building, and is it just
Language arts.
two of them all at once?
Yeah, language arts is what they've requested in the next year's budget. And when you discuss in the regular meeting, the reallocation of lottery funds, which is another issue. The lottery, the folks who determine where you can spend this money in this year's budget said it was okay to use money for demolition. Then they decided that the lottery was supposed to be used to build things, not tear things down. So next year, we won't be able to use lottery money to tear down the language arts building. Even though they gave us approval for the science building, they said, no, we're not going to give you approval for language arts next year. So we have to use the county funds to tear down language arts. That's just that's the beauty of
So they're just gonna
state government.
tear those buildings down and operate out of mobile units for a while, or?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I think it's determination by their architect that the mobile units will be a lot safer than those two buildings, and that's why they're going ahead and tearing them down.
These are bigger mobile units, right? From what I understand. Aren't they
I don't
mobile
know.
buildings?
They're not singular classrooms, if that's what you're asking.
Right.
Yes.
So this will all be done by the time school starts in August? What's Plan B if it's not? I guess that's not our worry, Or is it?
If not, I'm gonna go to Plan C.
I don't know. I don't think they're looking at it that way. I think it's
I guess
gotta have it
I'm more
done.
concerned about the safety of children around a work and demolition zone.
Well, the
Well, I think-
demolition will be complete, I think, without any problem before the school starts again.
I think they.
Construction person, I can't tell you if it'll be done or not. That's what they tell us.
I think the only thing that might hold them up on the demolition is the asbestos removal from the buildings. I think their initial assessment, and if you look at what they sent us, the initial asbestos assessment was lower than they actually getting in here before they get ready to tear it down, and the asbestos removal will be more. So they're actually transferring money to the demolition and trying to get more money into demolition to handle asbestos removal.
And it's not just an abatement thing, it's gotta be removed.
They're tearing the building down, they gotta remove it. And it has to be certified and taken to a certified site.
All right, let's move on.
Item 6,
No, okay.
yes, sir.
What do we do? Move on with?
Yeah, with,
Get a
No.
formal, formal proposal back to the board?
right.
Okay.
And if possible, have it before our next meeting, which is next Monday,
Okay,
5:30. How'd that be?
Yes, sir.
that's fine.
Okay.
Item 6 had the request to put, to talk about all the city of Sanford, or let's put them in writing, what our agreements are. And once you start putting them in writing, it's quite extensive. Mr. Hager and I came up with 14 ongoing agreements, whether they be in writing or by handshake.
You couldn't find the building inspection one, huh?
It's coming this way. The city does have it. I don't know why we couldn't find our copy of it, but
I would never got one.
Anyway, that
Do
is
we
coming
have
back
any,
our way.
do we have any problems with these contracts?
The only concern I had and expressed back to the city managers in the building inspections department, we had the fee increase 2 years ago. Our board was under the impression that would take us to revenue neutral, that it would cover, the fee increase would cover all the expenses, and that they would be less reliant on a county appropriation to balance that budget. And with the downturn in the housing starts in commercial and industrial construction, mainly industrial construction, they're running a deficit this current fiscal year and projecting a deficit for next year. Expressed concern about that, and told them that we didn't really want to fund deficits in the future. So,
I guess I would like to see an itemization of the number of inspections that have done in the city, within the city, and then those outside the city, just to see if we're getting our money's worth on that, or whether we ought to consider other options.
I'm looking at Don.
I
I
believe-
think I have those numbers, but
Well,
not in
and-
not in that form.
The tax department gets a copy of all those
Pardon?
permits.
Can we do that?
I'm not sure they're separated by inspections by city and county. I know that
The permits are.
the permits are.
Yeah.
We'll have to.
Yeah.
With the tax department.
So does the county do some of the inspections and the city does some of the inspections? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's all done by the one department, but yeah, they keep track of whether it's in the city or in the county, but by permit, but not by the actual number of times they have to go out and inspect each property, right?
We should be able to give you. a
Our
percentage.
appraisers, this keeps them up to date by following the permit trail to go inspect the property for appraisal purposes. Any other questions concerning the contract situation?
Some others, we'll take them up in finance.
I'll move this along, Mr. Chairman. The only other item that really has come to, that's been brought to our attention, it really came from the public hearing, is the money that we allocate to Haven. Last year, we gave them $5,000. They requested $10,000. This year, I recommended back at $5,000 again. The board, after the public hearing, asked for additional information from them. It's in the packet starting on page 107 in section 7. So it's there for you and your comment.
The year before last, we did give them $10,000, and current year was cut to $5,000 because of constraints of the budget. I don't know what the feeling of the finance committee is at this particular time on doing more than what we've allocated.
Well, I think we'll take a look at that, $81,000 that Commissioner Shippers found. You say you found $169,000?
Yes.
I know where 88 came from, so there's another 81, we'll look at yours.
Next, then that was 42.
Was it 42?
Well,
And then she's got 120.
I have a $35,000 item, a $120,000 item, a $14,000 item.
How much you got?
Well, 120 was the
Economic development. by
economic
land.
development for buying the land, which I don't believe
That's out.
there's any support on the board for. So,
No, that's out, that's,
It's already been cut.
yeah.
now, Haven, they have some plans on expanding, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'll say this, that I do know that they're looking to build a new building on or around Horner Boulevard near Bracking Street. And they're looking to go from, I think it's a 16-bed site to a 24-bed site. Also, they've had increases over the last number of years, and I was just read some of those. Since 2000, since 1996, over 2,000 women and been in abusive situations with children have been served by Haven. And since 1986, over 10,000 have been served by Haven. And they have worked hard over the past number of years. And I do know that we did fund them the initial 10,000 one year, I believe it was a couple of years ago. And then this past year, the 5,000. And with the work that they're doing and getting out into the community and working to prevent violence, they've done a remarkable job. They've gone out to the community colleges, also to the schools, to talk about, domestic violence and all this, how it affects the children. Well, that's one of our most valuable resources is our kids. And I am a person that has believed in helping people trying to help themselves. And one thing I have seen in the 28 years that I worked with emergency medical service is more than my share of domestic violence, whether it be to women or children, abuse of children. I think this is a good investment here in the county because they do a lot of good to help people help themselves. I think
Does the city contribute any to this, do you know, Jerry?
that I don't know. I'll see what I can do to find out.
And I have the same questions as I always do, so bear with me. I want to know the number of clients from their city versus from the county, and I want to see demographics.
I think that can be provided. I got this on the phone the other day, and I just pulled off the road and wrote it down right quick. But I did want to share that with you of what I had from 1986, brought it forward. I think it's best for them to try to have one facility accommodating the number of people or the number of bed spaces, and having the office in the same general area. To me, is a lot better situation to be working with. You're keeping up, working to provide something for one facility as opposed to two.
All right.
Ms. Shook, I don't think the city's providing any grant
I don't
money.
think they
They
do.
have pretty much
Find
limited
out.
their outside funding to, I think, the Temple Theater and maybe one other group, and that's it.
This additional information, Mr. Lamont, if you get that and get it to the Finance Committee.
Okay. Also, I'd like to say that in working with this and trying to get this information, I was in town the other week and picked up a letter of support from the sheriff's office, and the sheriff stated that this is the only avenue they have when they get into investigating these domestic violence calls and complaints and stuff like this. That's the only agency they've got to turn to help women with, been in these abusive relationships and especially with the kids. And it's been an asset to them.
Well, under certain circumstances, where children are involved, I believe DSS
Right.
gets involved in it also. So if you get that information to the Finance Committee and you bring a recommendation back to us.
Okay.
All right, I believe that covers everything that we had to discuss. Any commissioner have any additional comment? If not, then we will adjourn this meeting and convene at 3 o'clock for our regular board meeting.